are about to witness here these two fine gentlemen having a friendly conversation about how they managed the SIEM migration in 68 days and moving into Microsoft Sentinel. So Mr. Rick and Mr. Chris, thank you so much for joining us. And
thank you.
Take it away.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to CriblCon, if you haven't been told that about a million times yet. So Rick and I are just going to, Rick's from the University of Pittsburgh, and we'll get to the introduction slide here in a second. I'm obviously from Cribl, if the green shirt or teal shirt doesn't include you in. But we're going to talk about University of Pittsburgh's migration between SIEMs in 68 days. And that is to the day. I tracked it. Don't worry. I promise you it's not a fib. We were just talking about actually this migration butted up against the holidays. And the week before Christmas, Rick and I were on a call together when we were the only two. And I said, I think we can cancel these until after the first of the year. And he goes, yeah. And we came back and did the closeout for the migration. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to go over some things, and we'll just dive right in. So again, won't belabor this. Rick, badass from University of Pittsburgh. Me.
Official title.
Oh, yeah. Okay guy from Cribl. But jokes aside, I'm from the customer success team. Many of you probably have customer success engineers on your accounts. I'm just one of the many people. I've been with Cribl for about 4 years. So it was great working with Rick, and we're going to talk more about that.
Yeah.
So we won't belabor these slides on challenges and backgrounds. Rick and I were talking about this actually. I'm pretty sure you guys know what challenges come with a migration. But we are going to talk about things that were unique to University of Pittsburgh, and then kind of dive into how we actually accomplish this. So pardon my bad jokes, please. I'm the one that did the slide deck. Just some stats about the University of Pittsburgh, roughly 34,000 students, several faculty and staff. They have a large research footprint. You want to talk about that, Rick?
Yeah, the University of Pittsburgh is obviously a large research institution. In 2024, we're ranked top 8 among public universities in the U.S. for research, and we're consistently in the top 50 globally. So a large research footprint and a lot of research data.
Awesome. And I mean, this is just the stats on the devices and resources that they needed to monitor, what's part of Rick's purview in cybersecurity at Pittsburgh. And so, I mean, here it is. You guys see this all the time. Data's unstructured. You've got the need for threat monitoring and alerting, SOAR, compliance, incident response and investigation. Your existing solution, which for Pittsburgh was Splunk Enterprise, they had it all, but with cost and complexity comes a need for change. And you want to kind of go over just a little bit more in depth about like what you were doing in Splunk a little bit.
Sure. Yeah, obviously, I mean, you saw the size of our organization. So having a SIEM is important for us, not only for aggregating those log sources so it's easily searchable, but also for that, automated analysis, detection, and really empowering our SOC to respond to incidents. And so at the time, we did have an existing Splunk Enterprise instance. We were a Splunk Cloud customer for the log aggregation piece, and then we had Splunk Enterprise Security tagged onto that for the SIEM features. We're pulling in about 4 terabytes of data a day into Splunk, and managing about 900 Splunk universal forwarders. And then we also had, at the time it was still Phantom, but Splunk SOAR for that orchestration automation piece.
More just me painting the story of the challenges that they faced. Just with lack of normalization, and even bigger than that, and everybody knows you've got bean counters, and everyone loves and hates the bean counter, but not understanding ROI on your tools, not understanding, is this spend actually, working for us, but also like the things that affect the security team themselves, like mean time to resolution, prevalence of security incidents, what happens when you get like a new issue that comes on and how do you plan for that? Those are all, we talked about this quite a lot actually. There's a lot of challenges in doing that with the size of the team that Pitt has, as well as just their need. Because you guys have it's the main campus plus all the satellites. And
yeah, there's 4 satellite campuses.
Yeah, 4 satellites, and then you also have the other departments on campus that have to be monitored.
Yeah, very decentralized.
Yeah.
All the individual schools have their own IT staff for the most part. And that started to come in-house a little bit, but they were still very decentralized, and there's admins kind of spread out all over the place.
Awesome. And so, they tried so many different things to try to solve this on their own was just what they had. But I mean, as any of you have gone through a SIEM migration, you quickly realize that you cannot do today with what you need tomorrow. And that's what really happened here. And so there was a big push to, kind of find a better solution. And so they landed on Cribl and Sentinel. And it was actually kind of interesting, just in general, because with the university, there's a lot of decisions that happen that then wait for the decision to then happen later. And that's kind of the reason why we ended up accomplishing this in 68 days, because the decision was made to go forward with the project 90 days before the end of the contract with Splunk. And that adds its own super fun complexity to everything, especially as you're trying to manage expectations around like what's possible. And Travis will kill me, because you remember this, right? So initially when University of Pittsburgh, when I was assigned to the account and they reached out to me, I told them it would take them 6 months to accomplish what they needed to do. And Travis, the RSM, Travis nearly had an aneurysm, okay? Like, I'm pretty sure he did actually have an aneurysm when he was talking to me because he was elevated, put it that way. And so, but, we sat down again and talked with our partners. So we had Security Risk Associates, SRA, on our side delivering services. And on the Microsoft Sentinel side, they had a partner called Forsyte IT, I believe is their full name. Is it Forsyte? Yeah.
I think it was Forsyte, yeah.
Yeah, Forsyte. And so I can't stress this enough. Without services on both sides, what we accomplished is nearly impossible, because there is so much background underpinning work when you have to migrate to a new SIEM. And we're going to talk about this in a little bit, but I just want to give you a preamble here. It's data shape, format. If you're migrating to Sentinel, it's about DCRs and making sure if you need custom tables that they're available. You need to understand what the default tables are and what you can send there. And then you have to learn how to use their log analytics platform to really get the power out of it that you want. And so along that ride, Rick and team were also receiving enablement on all of this new stuff. So while the partner services on both sides are implementing things in the respective tools, and then Rick and team are bringing in other use cases that also need to be a part of this migration, they're also being enabled on both products. So not just Cribl, but also on Sentinel. And so that kind of gets us to the point of the implementation journey. And so this was the strategy, and you have to think of it this way when you do a SIEM migration. You cannot go in and say everything's important, because the unfortunate reality is everything is not important initially. You need to understand what's high priority. What can you push off to parallel work with your partner services or to your teams that can be done while your more seasoned people or a larger portion of your team are handling the high priority stuff. And then are there new things that these tools open up for you to do? I mean, because I've seen it, I've been with Cribl for 4 years, and I've seen it every time a customer sees that they can do something with the product, and that automatically gets added to whatever we're trying to do, or the reason or reasons why they bought the product. And so this happened even with the University of Pittsburgh. But the real success criteria was a full migration, complete agent replacement of everything that was Splunk. There would be no Splunk infrastructure left whenever we were done. And so, where they had the problems with having normalized data, our partner, SRA and Forsyte, both went in and made sure that things were standardized. They made sure that there were, shared config set up for new edge agent deployments, which we'll talk about how the edge agent use case or agent node use case came up, as well as compression to make sure that we're reducing the amount of data that we're landing in their SIEM, as well as in any data lakes that they may have in the future, and so on. So while University of Pitt is a Cribl Cloud customer, they're currently, right now, it's just Edge and Stream, and there's future use cases for Search and Lake, but that's,
down the road.
In the works.
Right.
So, and that's what we're going to kind of talk about here and show here. So, Rick, do you want to kind of talk about what we're looking at in terms of configurations? And
yeah, these are just some screenshots that I grabbed of some visualizations of how our data is coming in. So the approach we took, obviously on the left you have your source, on the far right you have your destination, which is the table and Sentinel that the data lands in. We kind of took this three-tiered approach of the data comes into Cribl, we have a pre-processing pipeline, which does that initial kind of extract and field extract of the data. If it's coming in as a JSON or a CSV, we'll parse that out and expand that to pull that initial set of fields. And then it goes into that middle phase, the pink or orange, whatever color that is, where we kind of call the processing pipeline, where we take that initial field extract, and that's where we work with the data and rename fields to match the destination table, drop events if we're not interested in them. That's where we do most of the processing work. And then finally, before we send it off to the destination, we do a post-processing pipeline where we essentially say, if you have any fields left over that aren't in the destination table, just drop those fields, and then the data is nice and packaged and ready to go into Sentinel. So this is just like some examples of, I think this is a little small, but I think this is some of our S3 sources coming from AWS. And most of our data follows the same model, which kind of stuck to that tiered approach.
Awesome. This is some more of the same.
This is more of the same, yeah, more S3, some GCP logs. This looks pretty similar.
We'll just go ahead and move forward.
Yep.
So if you're not familiar with Streams interface or anything like that, this is basically the data routes part of the interface where you have all of your routes defined. Do you want any of these stand out to you? You just want to kind of mention, right, that were interesting?
The only thing, whenever I grab the screenshot, I noticed a big problem that we probably want to fix. I don't know if anybody can point that out. But the Route 8 on the table is 33% of our data. That should be much higher in the list. So I need to go fix that after this. But but yeah, most of our data, a lot of this is, VMware logs is a big piece. A lot of this is coming from our edge agents, particularly the Windows events, IIS logs. That's going down through each route. If the criteria, if the log, if that event coming in matches the criteria, then we apply the appropriate pipeline and prepare it and send it off to Sentinel. So that's just what this kind of looks like. As data comes in, it's hitting all these routes for processing. And yeah, we obviously want to have the higher impact, the higher volume data sources higher up in the routes.
Awesome. More of the same, and we'll just kind of move forward to implementation. So here is where I'm really going to just kind of drill into what it took, and I'm just going to leave this slide here for you guys to read over. I won't belabor this. So like I mentioned before, it was just on the total package of everyone that was involved. So University of Pittsburgh, security team, as well as the infrastructure, correct?
Operations team.
Yeah. And then on the Microsoft side, you had Microsoft and Forsyte. And then on the Cribl side, you had me, obviously, and our partner. Shout out to Zach Zentaro if he ever sees this. Amazing guy at SRA. But we had daily 1 hour meetings. Remember this? Mm-hmm. Daily 1 hour meetings where it was literally Forsyte would come on and they would talk about what have you done for Pitt in the last 24 hours. Then SRA would give their update. What have you done for Pitt in the last 24 hours? And then both of them would say, this is what we're going to do for you in the next 24 hours. And then the project managers on the Pitt side were like, that's great. Please make sure that gets done. And I'm just sitting here like, on the background, reaching out to the Forsyte rep and the SRA rep and like, okay, you guys need to be talking, like what can you do together that will make this go off easier? And like, for instance, so when Forsyte was building out tables for the custom tables for Pitt, SRA is a very well-established Microsoft Azure partner. And so Zach actually gave the Forsyte team one of SRA scripts that they use to automatically generate custom tables and DCRs. So what the Forsyte team was originally going to take, I think they quoted originally like a month to take care of. They finished in like 2 days with SRA partnering with them. So I've told everyone at Cribl about this, all of our leadership. I've always mentioned it to you, but I cannot stress enough that if you have multiple services organizations involved in something like a SIEM migration, they have to work together. There is no option for that. Because if they're not working together, it's one hand washing the other without knowing if it's dirty or not. And if they're not in there constantly making sure that, this thing is taken care of so that, data can be sent from Cribl, or just making sure that, hey, is there anything, have you done this before? Because, this may be like that first time for that services person, or maybe they just done it a certain way and the other guy has a faster way to do it. So I can't stress enough the need for collaboration. I mean, the 68 days, the 2 environments, the reduction numbers, the annual savings, and all of that.
If I could add to that. So it wasn't a situation like our partners would come in, give us an update, go off and do the work and come in.
Right.
We had several internal engineers on our team that would sit with our partners, and as they're doing the work, we're getting skilled up along with them as we're implementing the products. So we reached a point, we got an understanding of both the Cribl and the Sentinel side where we could start taking on larger and larger bulks of that work. And so we had really 3 distinct teams all hammering away at getting this done, and it worked really nicely.
It's like you're reading my mind. I was going to kick it off to you to talk about that.
All right, there you go.
So when I was talking about like the enablement that they were doing, that was basically when you guys were doing it, because they would watch and start taking on things as they learn more in each product, so that by the time we got to the end of this, they weren't just sitting there going, well, what am I supposed to do now? Let me call that services organization and have them come back in and do some more of this stuff. And so kudos to you and the team and everything for like really taking it on. You'd be surprised how rare that can sometimes be.
Well, and SRA too for putting up with us and enduring our questions while they're hard at work. So it was good.
Poor Zach. I remember I sat in on one of those sessions and Zach was just like in the middle. I could hear him typing in the background and he's like answering a bunch of questions from the team. And I'm like, I can't even dual purpose like that. I barely have enough like awareness to have this conversation. So, I mean, but yeah, it was awesome to see. So some recommendations for anyone. Like I said before, not everything is immediately important. You have to make hard decisions about what is high value. You also need to focus on building reusable pipelines. And I actually want you to talk about that because you talked to me about that a little bit, about making sure that when you guys were doing things that it was something that you could build off of for future sources that need to be onboarded.
Well, yeah, that was part of the upskilling as we were doing this project, was understanding the logic and the process behind building the pipeline, so that, as we were tackling those high priority data sources first, but as we were taking on, new sources of data or circling back and tackling some of those lower priority items, we had that baseline of knowledge and understanding of how to build things out, and we can continue to grow on that and develop more and more complex pipelines. But yeah, typically we found the best approach was to try to not make pipelines that were so specific to the source that it was a one-off. If we could generalize it enough where we could feed multiple data sources through the same pipeline, that was easier on us, but also more efficient on the platform.
Right. And I don't think I included a slide in this because of just timing. But I do want to talk about that third bullet point there, outside of the Cribl University is free. But I said we would mention the edge use case. So when we were going through all of this, Pitt had a server environment that was air-gapped that they needed to monitor. And do you remember this?
Well, yeah, it wasn't quite air-gapped, but it was. We have certain VLANs that we consider secure, and they don't have outbound internet access. So when we're using a cloud service like Cribl Cloud, obviously that's a problem because they can't send their data out. And so that's where Edge, I said, came in.
And so if you're a Cribl Cloud customer, you can use a feature of the product called Connected Environments, which allows you to take an on-prem leader and connect it to your Cribl Cloud leader for billing purposes. So whereas if you were an on-prem customer, you would normally buy a license. Instead, you can connect that leader to your Cribl Cloud leader, and it will use your credits that are in your pool. And in their case, because I'm the one that actually architected this, I love talking about it. So what you can do in air-gapped, or we'll say VLAN secure environments, is you can take a leader and a worker, and those are the only two things that would have access to the internet. And then you can deploy all of your edge nodes into whatever environment that is unable to access the internet. And then as long as those edge nodes can reach back to that worker, which allows you to meet compliance requirements for security and everything that a lot of organizations have in their policy, then you can use that worker as essentially a dumping place for all of that data, and then you can push it to wherever you need to go. Like you can put it into Cribl Cloud using our protocols, Cribl HTTP or Cribl TCP, or what we call Cribl to Cribl, and you can process the data up in the cloud if it makes more sense for the processing to happen there, or you can do the processing on that worker and send it directly wherever you need to go. It was actually kind of cool, like when you guys got it all set up, you were kind of excited actually. What did the broader Pitt team think about that?
Well, I mean, we had a similar setup on the Splunk side with a heavy forwarder. So we had a single heavy forwarder server that was acting as a relay. So architecturally, it kind of mirrored that. But the real benefit to us from implementing Cribl Edge was just management of those endpoints. So managing the universal forwarders on the Splunk side was always a bit of a headache for us. Just trying to keep them organized, but then, managing and updating the configs per application, it was cumbersome. You're getting into, modifying config conf files and transform files on the heavy forwarder and pushing that out. And it's just a labor, a very laborious process. Cribl Edge made that a lot easier. We can configure that. We can organize our nodes on a fleet level, and there's inheritance. So we can have like a parent fleet for all of our Windows nodes, configure the data source for our Windows events to come in through that parent fleet, and then have subfleets for individual applications for IIS or whatnot underneath Windows, the Windows fleet. So those subfleets, they inherit the Windows source, but then they get the additional source configs that we apply for that application. So we can set up the source for the Windows event logs once, and then all of the subfleets inherit that config, which makes it a lot easier to manage. And then from just a maintenance perspective, keeping those edge agents up to date, it's all centrally managed. We can deploy those updates from the leader and the workers. That's way easier than manually deploying universal forwarders through Config Manager or Ansible or whatever other solution we were using before. So it's been good.
Awesome. And just to restate it, and it says up there, Cribl University is free. I can't stress enough how important it is to be enabled on our product, because honestly, we're trying to change the way you think about this. And just be honest, we're trying to get you to understand that you can divest yourself from this idea of you just do everything in the SIEM. Like you use our product to make intelligent decisions about your data, to send it to where you need to go, send it to low-cost storage if you don't need it in the SIEM. It's important that you understand that, and our Cribl University courses do cover that. And you get a nice little certification. And if you find DAR at one of these events, she may even give you a pin or something. So we got about 7.5 minutes left. I wanted to kind of leave some time for any Q&A if you guys had any questions. I know this is clearly a hot topic. So if anyone has any questions or anything, Rick and I are available right now. Well, I'll also be here for a few extra minutes. I don't know how much longer you can stay, but yeah, we'll be here if you guys want to ask any questions now or after the rest of this. Feel free.
Yes, thank you. I was going to ask, how big was your team, and how much how much data did you have to migrate in terms of like sources and indexes? Like, how big was that?
So our team internally at the time, I think there was 2 engineers that were dedicated to this. Well, not dedicated to this, but who were working on this. And we had to migrate. We were looking at Splunk. Splunk was ingesting about 4 terabytes of data. So we were looking at, and I think it had 350 terabytes searchable. So we were looking to all 4 terabytes of that, either pipe it directly into our new SIEM Sentinel or pipe it through Cribl and process it and hopefully shrink that down a little bit.
Were the indexes like kind of different, or were they all like kind of similar data?
All different indexes. Okay. Yeah, all over the place. And that was a big takeaway for us. I mean, I like Splunk for its ability to take in your data unstructured, and it fits the index to your data. But I also don't like it for that reason, because we had a lot of indexes that were just a mess. We had engineers that were, just over time and due to time constraints and whatever other reason, we were pulling in data from various sources, and either doing no or very little processing to normalize the data or extract useful information out of it. And so it was just kind of raw garbage. And like I said, we had 2 people on the team. SIEM is a very small slice of our responsibilities on a daily basis. We really struggled to find the resources to clean that up and get it to where we needed it to be.
Awesome. Thank you.
Sure.
I think you had one in the back right, Aaron.
Anybody else?
Hi. You said the 30% drop events at the edge. Can you give an example?
I'm sorry, I didn't quite hear.
30% drop at the edge agent? One of the slides said it was 37% drop.
Oh, I think that might be overall. So that's compared to, I think we were just looking at raw data ingest numbers into Sentinel versus Splunk. And so what we saw was by the time we were all done with the migration and we had all of our data going into Sentinel, overall we saw a 37% drop in our ingest, just from a raw gigabytes or terabytes perspective.
So you didn't do any filtering at the edge side. It was all.
Well, kind of. We're doing it through Stream primarily, but the data that's coming in through Edge is getting sent through Stream pipelines, and that's where we're, for Windows events specific. For example, certain event IDs we just don't care about. They don't provide value to our security team, so we're just dropping those out, and that's something we weren't doing on the Splunk side.
You can't.
Yeah.
So given that reduction, that 37% reduction, did you get the same functionality out of your SIEM that you were getting out of Splunk Enterprise?
I would say we're getting way more value out of Sentinel than we were in Splunk. And that's not necessarily an indictment of Splunk. It's more of we just didn't have the resources to devote to Splunk to get it where we needed to be, at least Splunk on its own. And when we made a decision to move off of Splunk and bring Cribl in, Cribl has streamlined that whole data flow process for us and made it much more tenable for us to get a handle on it. And so now the data that's going into our SIEM is much more normalized, much more usable, and we're able to take advantage of Sentinel's built-in analytics rules and the built-in functionality of the SIEM much more than we ever did with Splunk.
Did you guys have any feeds like a single feed that had multiple data sources of different shapes, sizes, flavors, and how did you use Cribl to kind of break them apart?
Yeah, I'm trying to think of an example. I want to say our Palo logs are like that, but I may be mistaken. But yeah, we do have several data sources like that, and typically that's where the routes come in. So we'll send that data through. We'll do that initial pre-processing pipeline to do the field extractions, because typically in a lot of these situations the data is coming in as a JSON or CSV or some kind of standard format, right? So we can do an initial field extract, and then based on those fields, we can choose which route to send that data through and then apply the correct pipeline depending on the type of event from that single stream, if that makes sense.
Any other questions?
Got one up here.
Yes, I assume you have some kind of a log retention requirement. So when you moved to Sentinel, what did you do with the logs that were retained on Splunk?
Yeah, so we set up an S3 bucket, and Splunk has the option to archive to S3. So, and internally we have a 120-day requirement to retain logs. So we started 120 days out from the end of our contract. We started sending all of our data to S3 for archive, and then we held on to that 120 days post migration.
And then you set your tables in Sentinel for retention after that, correct?
Yeah, and in Sentinel's configured, for 120 days retention as well. Yep.
Also, you mentioned a project manager on one of the calls. How much project management resources were involved in this?
Yeah, that's a good question. You remember?
It was...
We had one PM.
We had PM.
But I don't remember.
Well, so each of the organizations...
The partners really did a lot of the work, right?
Each of the organizations involved had their own PM, to be honest with you. So Forsyte had a PM, SRA had a PM, and then Pitt had a PM. And then you had me. And you work with me, so you know what I do. But my role, their role in that was just making sure that, like for Pitt, for instance, that the timeline and the goals on that timeline and objectives were being met. Same thing for the other organizations. we also had a separate, you weren't in this one, but we had a separate meeting. I didn't talk about this. We had a separate meeting where it was just me and the project managers making sure that they were all talking to each other and they were all aligned on what was going on as well. So.
Yeah, I think that was the main thing, was just keeping all the PMs on the same page, right?
Because trust me, they would join a call and they would be on 4 different pages and I would get frustrated. So. Awesome, we got one back there. And I think this will be our last one.
What were the roles of the other companies? What were they doing?
So Microsoft, obviously Sentinel, but like with Forsyte, Forsyte is a Microsoft tech partner who delivers services for them for Sentinel. And then SRA, or Security Risk Associates, is one of our partners who, is a Cribl certified services consultant organization that we've been using for a very long time and is really experienced with deploying Cribl at enterprise scale.
Yeah, so we had one partner who was focused on the Sentinel side, standing up and prepping that environment, and then another partner who was focused on the Cribl side, helping us set up those data sources and doing those initial pipelines and getting our data into Sentinel. So between the two partners and us in the middle, coordinating things and getting all the right people involved, and then later on helping out with a lot of the technical work, we were able to get it done.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thanks, everybody, for joining us.